I would have wanted to wear too much makeup, too much hair, because I am the backwoods Barbie. I love hair and makeup. I love...
Dolly Parton is America's sweetheart. She's the woman with the big hair and an even bigger heart, the one everyone trusts. She has given away millions of books and smiled through 6 decades in the spotlight. But that smile hides a lot. Behind the rhinestones and the kindness, there is another side to Dolly's career. A story of men who tried to control her, men who thought they owned her, who wanted pieces of her that she refused to give. They smiled with her on camera and even praised her in public. But behind the scenes, there were slammed doors, bitter words, and friendships that did not survive. One singer said he made her. One tried to steal her biggest hit. Another watched her walk away and never forgave her for it. Most of them are gone now. And Dolly Parton has finally opened up about the celebs who tried to break her. Dolly Parton's complicated reputation. Dolly Parton is one of the most beloved women in America. It is a fact backed by polling, record sales, and the way crowds rise to their feet whenever she walks on stage. Dolly Parton has spent more than 60 years building an image so warm, so genuine, and so universally adored that it is hard to imagine anyone having a bad word to say about her. But that's not the whole story. Behind the big hair and the bigger smile is a woman who has stepped on toes, who has refused to back down, who has made enemies in high places and walked away without looking back. The same determination that made her a legend also put her in conflict with some of the most powerful people in entertainment. And over the decades, there have been plenty of celebrities who learned the hard way that Dolly Parton is not someone to be pushed around. She is known as the Queen of Country Music, a title earned through 50 studio albums, 11 Grammy Awards, and a career that has spanned from the Grand Ole Opry to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. But long before she became an icon, she was a young woman fighting battles that most people never saw. Dolly was born in 1946 in a one-room cabin in the Smoky Mountains of Tennessee. She was the 4th of 12 children. Her father was a tobacco farmer who could not read or write. Her mother was a homemaker who filled the house with music. From the beginning, Dolly knew she wanted out. She wanted to sing, and she was willing to work for it. At age 10, she was already appearing on local television and radio. At 13, she recorded her first single and stepped onto the stage of the Grand Ole Opry, introduced by Johnny Cash himself. By 18, she had graduated high school and moved to Nashville the very next day. She was young, she was ambitious, and she was determined to make it on her own terms. But Nashville in the 1960s was not welcoming to young women with ambition. The music industry was run by men. They made the decisions. They controlled the money. They decided who got recorded and who got sent home. Dolly quickly learned that if she wanted to succeed, she would have to fight for every inch. Before she became a star in her own right, she made a living writing songs for other artists. In 1966, Bill Phillips recorded her song Put It Off Until Tomorrow, and it became a hit. The next year, Skeeter Davis recorded Fuel to the Flame. These early successes proved that Dolly could write songs that connected with audiences. But they also taught her something else. The people singing her songs were making more money from them than she was. When she signed with Monument Records, the executives tried to mold her into something she was not. They wanted bubblegum pop. They wanted her to sound like every other girl singer on the radio. Dolly wanted to sing country. She fought them until they let her record the way she wanted. In 1967, she released Dumb Blonde, a song that became her first charting hit. The lyrics were perfect for her. Just because I'm blonde, don't think I'm dumb. The song was not just a hit. It was a statement. By 1968, she had moved to RCA Victor Records, one of the biggest labels in the business. The executives there tried a different approach. They wanted to soften her image. They wanted her to tone down the big hair, the flashy clothes, and the rhinestones. They wanted her to look more like the country girl next door. Dolly refused. She had learned something important. The men running the labels did not understand her appeal. They did not understand that the look was part of the act. They did not understand that she was building something bigger than just a singing career. She was building a brand, and she was not about to let them tear it down. She also fought for something more important than her image, and that was ownership. At a time when most artists signed away their publishing rights without a second thought, Dolly insisted on keeping hers. She started her own publishing company in 1966, a move that seemed strange to the men who ran the industry. Why would a young woman need to own her own songs? Let the professionals handle that. But Dolly understood something they did not. Songs are property and income. Songs are the only thing an artist truly has that cannot be taken away. She held on to hers, and that decision would make her a multimillionaire many times over. Over the years, she has collected 11 Grammy Awards. She has been inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame and the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, a rare combination that speaks to her range as an artist. She has built a business empire that includes Dollywood, which has been operating since 1986, and the Imagination Library, which has donated more than 200 million books to children around the world. She has acted in films like 9 to 5 and Steel Magnolias, proving that her talents extended far beyond the recording studio. Through it all, she has maintained a public persona that seems almost too good to be true. She jokes about her appearance, once saying, "I'm not offended by dumb blonde jokes because I know I'm not dumb, and I also know I'm not blonde." She deflects political questions with humor and has somehow become beloved by both sides of the American cultural divide, a feat that seems impossible in the modern era. But that does not mean everyone loves her. There are people in the music industry who have felt the sharp end of her determination. People who tried to control her and failed. People who thought they could take advantage of her and learned otherwise. The mentor who wanted to control her. Before Dolly Parton became a star on her own, she was part of a duo that made her famous. The man standing next to her wore rhinestone suits that sparkled under the stage lights. His hair was a towering blonde pompadour that took as much effort as Dolly's own wigs. He had been a star since the 1950s, with hit records on RCA Victor and a television show that reached millions of homes every week. His name was Porter Wagoner, and for 7 years, he was the most important person in Dolly Parton's career. By the mid-1960s, Porter Wagoner was one of the most powerful figures in country music. He had his own syndicated television program, The Porter Wagoner Show, which had been on the air since 1960. He was a regular at the Grand Ole Opry. He had hits and awards, and the kind of recognition that came from decades of hard work. When his female singer, Norma Jean, left the show in 1967, he needed a replacement. Someone told him about a young woman from the Smoky Mountains who had a big voice and bigger ambition. Dolly Parton was 21 years old when Porter Wagoner called. She had released her debut album, Hello, I'm Dolly, earlier that year. She was trying to find her footing in Nashville, writing songs and hoping for a break. Porter offered her a spot on his show, and she took it. For the next 7 years, they were everywhere together. They recorded duets that became hits. The Last Thing on My Mind came out in 1967 and climbed the charts. Please Don't Stop Loving Me followed in 1974. They toured constantly, playing to audiences who loved watching them trade verses on stage. Porter's show introduced Dolly to millions of people who had never heard of her before. He made her a household name. But the relationship was complicated from the beginning. Porter saw himself as Dolly's mentor. He had discovered her, he had given her a platform, and he believed that gave him the right to make decisions about her career. He controlled what songs she recorded. He controlled where they performed. He even controlled the money. Dolly was grateful for the opportunity, but she was not the kind of woman who enjoyed being controlled. She later described their relationship as fire and ice. There was creative energy between them that made great music, but there were also constant clashes. Porter could be difficult. He was used to getting his way, and as Dolly's fame grew, he did not handle it well. By the early 1970s, Dolly wanted to strike out on her own. She had ideas for songs that did not fit the duet format. She wanted to record solo albums that showed a different side of her talent. She wanted to reach audiences beyond country music. However, Porter resisted. He knew that if Dolly left, his show would lose its biggest draw. He needed her more than she needed him, and that reality made him bitter. There were other problems too. Porter made decisions without consulting her. He booked performances and expected her to show up. He treated her like an employee rather than a partner. Dolly later called him a male chauvinist pig, a phrase that captured the frustration she felt during those years. He was from an older generation, where men made the decisions and women followed along. But Dolly was not interested in following. In 1974, she made her choice. She told Porter she was leaving the show to pursue a solo career. He did not take it well. There were arguments and accusations. There was also a sense of betrayal on his side and a sense of relief on hers. Before she walked away, Dolly did something that showed exactly who she was. She sat down and wrote a song. It was not an angry song about fights, money, or control. It was a song about gratitude and goodbye. She wrote it as a gift to Porter, a way of saying thank you for everything he had done, while also making clear that she had to go. The song was called "I Will Always Love You." She recorded it and released it in 1974, and it went to #1 on the Billboard Country chart. Years later, Whitney Houston would record it for the film The Bodyguard, and it would become one of the best-selling singles of all time. But in 1974, it was Dolly's farewell to the man who had made her famous. The goodbye was not clean. In 1979, 5 years after she left, Porter sued her. He claimed she owed him money from their partnership. He said they had an agreement that entitled him to a share of her earnings. The lawsuit was ugly and public. It dragged on until they finally settled out of court. The terms were never disclosed, but the damage was done. Two people who had made beautiful music together were now enemies. Dolly moved forward. In 1977, she crossed over into pop music with "Here You Come Again." The song was a massive hit and opened doors she had been trying to open for years. She became a star on a whole new level. She started acting in films. She built her business empire and proved that leaving Porter Wagoner was the right decision. But she never forgot him. As the years passed, the bitterness faded. In the 1980s and 1990s, they began to reconcile. They would see each other at industry events. They would say hello and would talk a little. The anger that had burned so hot began to cool. In 2007, Porter Wagoner fell ill. He was 80 years old, and his health was failing. Dolly went to visit him. They sat together and talked about the old days. They talked about the music and the tours and the arguments. They talked about everything that had happened between them. And before she left, they made their peace. On October 28, 2007, Porter Wagoner died. Dolly released a statement that said exactly what you would expect from her. She called him one of the greatest stars in country music. She said she would always love him. The words were not just a tribute. They were the title of the song she had written for him 33 years earlier. The song that said goodbye and thank you all at once. The feud with Porter Wagoner taught Dolly that standing up for yourself comes with a price. People will call you difficult and ungrateful. People will even sue you. But if you do not stand up, you will spend your whole life working for someone else's dream instead of your own. That lesson would serve her well. Because soon after the lawsuit with Porter was settled, another opportunity came knocking. An opportunity that would have made her one of the biggest stars in the world immediately. This opportunity came from the biggest star in the world, and Dolly turned it down. The industry legend Dolly turned down. When Dolly Parton wrote "I Will Always Love You" in 1974, she watched it climb to #1 on the country charts. It was her song, her words, and her publishing rights. She owned every piece of it. But then Elvis Presley called. The king of rock and roll had been a global icon for 2 decades by then. From his first recordings in 1954 to his breakthrough with Heartbreak Hotel in 1956, Elvis had transformed popular music. He had sold hundreds of millions of records. He had starred in several films. He was one of the most famous human beings on the planet. When Elvis wanted to record your song, it was the kind of opportunity that came along once in a lifetime. Elvis heard "I Will Always Love You" and wanted to sing it. He believed it would be a hit for him. He was probably right. His version would have reached millions of people who had never listened to country music. It would have introduced Dolly's songwriting to an entirely new audience. It would have been a collaboration between the Queen of Country and the King of Rock and Roll. But there was a catch. Elvis's manager was a man named Colonel Tom Parker. Parker was famous for his aggressive business tactics. He controlled Elvis's career with an iron fist and took a substantial cut of everything Elvis earned. When Parker learned that Elvis wanted to record Dolly's song, he laid out his terms. Elvis would record it, but only if Dolly signed over half of the publishing rights. For most songwriters, this would have been an easy decision. The chance to have Elvis Presley sing your song was worth almost any price. The exposure alone would have been invaluable. Many writers would have signed over the rights without a second thought, grateful for the opportunity. But Dolly said no. She later described lying in bed that night, crying because she knew what she was giving up. She loved Elvis. She had grown up listening to him. The idea of hearing him sing her words was almost too much to imagine. But she also understood something that the Colonel did not expect her to understand. Publishing rights are not just pieces of paper. They are income. They are security. And they are the difference between being rich for a year and being rich for a lifetime. Dolly had fought too hard to own her songs. She had started her own publishing company in 1966, at a time when women in Nashville did not do such things. She had turned down offers before. She had watched other artists sign away their rights and later regret it. She knew that if she gave up half of "I Will Always Love You," she would be giving up half of every dollar that song ever earned. Forever. So she told Elvis, no. There is no record of Elvis being angry about the decision. The dispute was handled through Parker, not through Elvis directly. Dolly never met Elvis in person, then or ever. The opportunity passed, and Elvis moved on to other songs. He never recorded "I Will Always Love You." In 1977, 3 years after Dolly turned him down, Elvis Presley died at Graceland. He was 42 years old, and the chance for them to ever collaborate died with him. For Dolly, The decision haunted her in some ways. She has talked about it many times over the years. She always comes back to the same point. It broke her heart to say no. She loved Elvis. She would have loved to hear what he did with her song, but she had to stand her ground. Giving up the publishing rights would have cost her too much. That decision turned out to be one of the smartest business moves in music history. In 1992, Whitney Houston recorded "I Will Always Love You" for the film The Bodyguard. Her version was powerful, soaring, completely different from Dolly's original. It became one of the best-selling singles of all time. It sold more than 20 million copies worldwide. It spent weeks at #1 on charts around the globe. And every time it played, every time it was downloaded, every time it was used in a film or commercial, Dolly Parton earned money. Because she owned the publishing rights. She has said many times that she thinks Elvis would have sung the song beautifully. She believes his version would have been special. But she also knows that her decision to say no set her up for life. It allowed her to build the imagination library, which has given away hundreds of millions of books. It allowed her to invest in Dollywood and all her other ventures. It allowed her to control her own destiny. But Dolly did not just turn down Elvis. She turned down the entire system that Colonel Tom Parker represented. She refused to let a man in a suit make decisions about her property. She refused to be treated like someone who did not understand the value of her own work. That same determination would put her in conflict with other legends over the years. Some of them were friends. Some of them were rivals. And some of them, like the man who came next, were both. Dolly's friction with Johnny Cash. Before Dolly Parton became a star, she was a teenager in the audience at the Grand Ole Opry. She sat in the crowd and watched the legends walk across that stage, and one of them stood out from all the rest. He was tall and dressed in black. His name was Johnny Cash, and Dolly Parton never forgot what it felt like to watch him perform. Johnny Cash had been a force in music since the 1950s. He sold more than 90 million records and was inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and the Gospel Music Hall of Fame, a combination that showed just how wide his reach had been. By the time Dolly arrived in Nashville, Johnny Cash was already a legend. Their paths crossed at the Opry and at industry events. They moved in the same circles, shared the same stages, and were both signed to the same label at different points. They knew each other the way people in the same business always know each other. But Dolly was never someone who bowed to legends. She admired Johnny Cash. She said so many times over the years, but admiration did not mean silence. It did not mean pretending someone was perfect when they were not. And Johnny Cash, for all his talent, was far from perfect. His struggles with addiction were well known in the industry. He had been using illicit substances since the 1950s, and the habit nearly destroyed him. He would disappear for days. He would show up late or not at all. He would behave erratically, driven by whatever substance was in his system at the time. Dolly watched all of this happen. She saw the way his struggles affected the people around him. She saw the chaos that followed in his wake. And while she never condemned him publicly, she also never pretended the chaos did not exist. She described him later as full of weird emotions, a phrase that captured both her admiration and her recognition of his troubled side. At some point, there was a disagreement between them. Dolly has referenced it over the years without going into great detail. She said she called him out on something, but did not specify what. Johnny Cash was the kind of man who commanded rooms by walking into them. People did not challenge him or question him, and people certainly did not tell him he was wrong. But Dolly did. It was not about being disrespectful. It was about being honest. She had built her career on honesty, on saying what she meant and meaning what she said. If she thought Johnny Cash was wrong about something, she was going to say so. That was who she was. That was who she had always been. Cash, for his part, seemed to respect her for it. There is no record of him ever saying a bad word about Dolly. He understood what she was doing. He understood that she was not attacking him. She was simply refusing to be silent. In the male-dominated world of Nashville, that kind of refusal was rare. It may have been one of the reasons he respected her as much as he did. Dolly also said something else about Johnny Cash that stuck with people. She said he was not a great singer, not in the technical sense. He did not have the smooth voice of a crooner or the high, lonesome sound of traditional country. But she also said he did not need to be. His authority made up for everything. His presence carried the song. He could stand on a stage and hold an audience captive without hitting a single perfect note. That was a kind of talent that had nothing to do with technique. It was also a kind of talent Dolly understood because she had it herself, but not in the same way. Dolly's voice is technically strong, capable of reaching notes and holding them in ways Johnny Cash never could. But the presence, the authority, and the ability to walk on stage and own the room, that was something they shared. That was something she had learned to do in her own way, with her own style, and on her own terms. In 2003, Johnny Cash's health failed. He had been struggling for years with diabetes and other complications. On September 12th of that year, he died in Nashville. He was 71 years old. His wife, June Carter Cash, had died just 4 months earlier. The music world lost two of its biggest names in a single year. Dolly paid tribute to him publicly. She called him one of the greatest influences in country music. She spoke about what he meant to her and to everyone who loved the genre. She honored his legacy without pretending he had been perfect, but she never forgot the friction they had. That was always the way with Dolly. She could hold two truths in her head at the same time. Johnny Cash was a genius, but he was a mess. He commanded the room and made bad decisions, yet he changed music forever. All of these things could be true at once, and Dolly was never afraid to acknowledge all of them. In the years since his passing, Dolly has continued to speak about Johnny Cash with warmth and honesty. She remembers the teenager who watched him from the audience at the Opry. She remembers the legend who walked on stage and owned it. And she remembers the man she called out when she thought he needed to hear it. All of those memories exist together, and she carries all of them. That is what it means to be Dolly Parton. She loves deeply. She forgives freely. But she never, ever pretends. Which of these feuds do you think had the biggest impact on Dolly's career? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you love juicy deep dives into celebrity lives, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon so you never miss a new video.